Hi, everyone. So, I've spent my whole adult life trying to forgive my father for destroying my mother. It was one of those spectacular 80s divorces, and my impossible fury over it could not be quelched. Is that a word? Quelled. Couldn't be extinguished since then. It was him who shattered my mom into a million pieces. It was him who pushed her off the precipice of sanity into a deep, dark abyss of depression and hoarding. When I was 15 years old, I watched my mother fall apart. I watched her disintegrate right before my very eyes. And we were then slowly overcome by a growing horde of dogs, filth, cockroaches. And she blamed my father, and I blamed him too. I was also afraid of his extreme conservative thinking and his need for everyone to be a certain way, especially for his need for me to be a certain way. Straight, conservative, Christian, and a woman. If you've read the program or heard the program just now, you'll know that I am none of those things. I am a bleeding heart liberal who believes in love, not God, who is more queer than straight and more man than the woman I never was. I'm an artist and an activist, and I'm transgender. This is not exactly what my father ordered off the menu. Trying to navigate through his limited spectrum caused me to become a shapeshifter. As I grew up, I knew more and more that I wasn't what my father wanted. And those were the thoughts that I could bear the least. I wanted his love so badly, but I didn't think I could have it the way that I was. I didn't think I could have it unless I could change on the fly. Like lightning, I would reorganize my molecules into some bizarre, distorted version of myself. Not an artist, not tender-hearted, and sure as shit, not a tranny freak, which is the only language that I had for it at that time. I would become sort of a featureless mound of flesh, always agreeable, without opinions, in need of nothing and quiet most of the time. But on the inside, my rage would boil, condensing my feelings of despair into life-killing acid. My inauthenticity, this dishonest way of being with him, was intolerable, so I avoided it. It would be a year, 2 years, or more between visits with my father, and when I did make the time, it was only out of obligation, not for want. It was about the appearance of being a good daughter. Not since my parents' divorce had I spent one single second with him because I wanted to be there. And every moment I spent with him was torture because I couldn't be myself and I couldn't stop lying about who I was. So earlier this year, when he invited me to go on a 2-week road trip through Utah, I immediately said yes. For the months leading up to this trip, I imagined what it was going to be like being trapped in this car, driving through endless beige deserts, listening to Fox News without end, and enduring hours upon hours of exhausting shape-shifting. But wait, there's more. While I had already come out as trans with my father, this trip would mark the first time that he would lay eyes on me since I began transitioning. My physical changes had taken place in the 2.5 years it's been since I last saw him, since someone that he knew as his daughter began looking like his son. As the time approached, I decided a few things. One, I would not let myself shapeshift, no matter how how hard the urge was, I would be authentic, not perfect, but I would be authentic. I would give him the opportunity to know the real me. And I hoped that we could see each other anew for who we actually are, who I actually am, who he actually is. More than anything, I wanted to achieve that, to reclaim the fun and understanding that we shared when I was a little child, before all these heaps of emotional garbage got in the way. And I wanted to go in free from my story about him. He's a Trump supporter, he's a Fox News listener, he's blah, blah, blah. Like, I wanted to just leave that aside. 2, I decided I would give him a wide berth with my pronouns. I got myself emotionally steady and prepared to hear the wrong ones from him, which is something I don't really tolerate in other people. And if he misgendered me, I had a plan. If he misgendered me in front of somebody that seemed maybe dangerous, I would lean in and whisper, "He thinks I'm my sister." It was important to me to give him room to journey through the transition that had been 2.5 years for me, but for him would become real in an instant. And 3, I prepared myself to hear my old name over and over and over and over again. And while that name makes me shudder, I wanted to extend him kindness. I wanted to guide him along the path that I've taken with a gentle hand. And I wanted to give him room to mourn the loss of the daughter he thought I was, and to meet his son for the first time. Okay, so the plan. The plan is we're gonna meet in Salt Lake City. We're gonna rent a car and we're gonna start driving. I arrive first and I go to the hotel with 3 full hours to wait and stew. So, because I'm anxious, I decide it's gonna be best if I take a nap. Off the plane, he calls me, cussing in the old familiar way. He can't get his GPS to work and he can't find the hotel. And he sounds angry to me, and now I'm nervous. What have I agreed to? Can I change my mind? Can I change my flight? Can I change the person who I call my father? He arrives and wants to meet in the lobby. It's go time. It's the moment of truth. I suck in all the air in my room into my lungs and slowly blow it out. I look at myself in the mirror, and it's new. It's new for me to recognize myself. Before, all I could see were female traits covering me over. Now I finally see someone who looks like me. Bearded, broadened, and totally boobless. Which is a super good thing, let me tell you. Okay, so as I get off the elevator, I can see him outside smoking a cigarette. And he looks up, and we lock eyes. And in that moment, in that instant, there was an acknowledgement that happened. It was so subtle as to not really be noticeable by any other person, but it was powerfully present. It was like blue electricity sparking between electrodes. It is a moment of seeing and being seen. And for the first time in over 30 years, I suddenly feel normal. Like I'm not distorted. I'm not a shapeless mound of flesh. I feel tall and confident in my body and perfectly okay with being me. For the first time in his presence, I wasn't trying to figure out who to be. It is beautiful, this trip. Sitting in this car, while my father drives us through Utah's deserts, riding for hours watching the landscapes roll by, and it is magnificent, not beige. It's painted in intensities of red and purple and orange, blue and sage green. It is majestic with huge rocks and boulders clamoring out of the hard clay, reaching for the sky. I have my camera and all my lenses, and I'm like, pull over here. And he's like, missing the mark by 20 feet. And I'm like, that's okay. I'm gonna take a picture of this poorly composed photo anyway. When the sun is setting, it's time to seek out the perfect chicken fried steaks and budget motel rooms. Sharing a room with your dad, who's not wearing any underwear at night, is maybe a little unfavorable, but we're just a couple of dudes sharing a cheap motel room until daylight. I ask if any part of seeing me appear so differently has been hard for him, and he says, it really hasn't been as hard for me as I thought it would be. And I say, I was so afraid when I told you that I was transgender that you wouldn't want to be my father anymore. And he said, hon, there's nothing in the world you could ever do that would cause me not to love you. It occurs to me how a trip like this could seem so boring. Like, oh God, we're gonna sit in a car for 2 weeks. We're gonna listen to 50s doo-wop songs all day, every day. How could that not be dull? But there wasn't a single fucking breath of it that was boring. Every moment was profound. Having the privilege to make this relationship journey with my dad, to know my dad again, to get back where we started from the dark places we've been, that's a miracle. Because I chose to transition, people like to talk with me a lot about my journey. And all I can really say is that we're all in a journey in life, all of us. And I think that my father was an unaccepting and aggressive kind of person. But he's on a journey too. And while I've evolved, I don't think that I allowed him to change also. I'm not saying every person develops who can accept their child as transgender, because many people don't. But he did, and he showed me. The trip is almost through. We're hanging out at the airport when he turns to me and says, I wanted to ask you, when the time comes, do you want to take my medals? And I get that those medals are his life's highest achievements. His service in the Navy and those medals are his whole identity. His whole life has been in service to this country. And I'm suddenly struck with thoughts of his mortality, thoughts about losing him all over again. And I look at him and confirm in my head that, yes, he does look old to me now. And now I'm trying not to sob in the middle of the airport. We just got here, you know. We just got here. We just fucking got here, and how sad this is gonna be one day. I'm walking him to the gate, and thank God there are TVs and phones to distract me while I'm trying to keep it together and keep myself from bawling. They call for his flight to start boarding, and I just turned to him, I hugged him, and I repeatedly said, I just love you. I just love you. I just love you, and I'm so glad that we got to take this trip together. And he seems stunned. And at that moment, all the mountains of crap that I have spent my whole fucking life wading through was replaced with true forgiveness. Getting absorbed by people swarming to board the plane, he lost sight of me, but I could see him looking. And when we did find each other again, we just said something dumb like, "Text you when you get home." I really had felt all my life that if he knew certain things, or that if I was a certain way, he wouldn't want to be my father anymore. But that belief was obliterated, and there's no residual of it left. I know 1,000,000% that he's there no matter what. He's just my fucking dad. He's not ashamed of me. He's not the person I believed couldn't handle it. And I'm so glad that I get to have my dad in my life. I love you, Dad.